This is the Heather Patero Show, where conversation meets calling. Well, welcome to the Heather Patero Show. Today's conversation is about craft, legacy, reinvention, and what it looks like to rebuild a creative life in a new country. Also, I get to interview one of my favorite humans. My guest is David Henry. He is a retired teacher of 34 years teaching instrumental music across 4 Georgia schools. That's a long time shaping musicians and shaping humans one rehearsal at a time. He retired in 2019 from both teaching and from design, coordination, and instructional roles in Drum Corps International because apparently one retirement wasn't dramatic enough. Throughout his career, he stayed active in the industry: audio engineering, live sound reinforcement, custom PA design and installation, and time as a studio musician at the iconic Reel-to-Reel studios in the Atlanta area. Then in 2021, relocated to Ecuador with his family, including 2 young girls. And since then, he's been writing, recording, and releasing music, collaborating with artists around the world, and exploring virtual instruments and AI-assisted music productions. He's got 2 singles out now, an album in progress planned for release later this year, and he's building it all from home. And later in the episode, we'll have a quick call-in from Mark Ware, David's songwriting partner, a Georgia-based country singer-songwriter. Mark also happens to be a part of my music history, my classmate and high school bandmate. So yes, this episode is basically a high school reunion with better audio quality and a soundtrack. David Henry, welcome to the show.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. Our little 3-man band reunion.
That's awesome. So I have some questions for you. We're going to kind of go back to the origin. Where did music first grab you, and when did it go from, "Ooh, I like this," to, "Oh no, this is my life now"?
Well, it was sudden and a long process all at the same time. The first 2 things I remember as a young child, the first one, I was about 5 or 6 years old. I was in Kentucky visiting my grandparents in June, I believe it was, probably 66 or 67. And my parents took us all to the public pool. They had music on the PA there, which of course in 1966 was a little cheap plastic speaker that had no bass and nothing but treble. And the music was playing. I wasn't really paying any attention to it. And then for some reason, Tommy James and the Shondells came on. My baby does the hanky panky, and I had to stare at the speaker for 2 minutes and 59 seconds because I didn't know what I was hearing. And it didn't make sense to me then, but it was it was that magnetism that was the first time I just felt drawn like a magnet to wondering how they did this. What was the spark behind this? And it was life-changing. I just didn't really know it yet. And then fast forward to, I guess, about 2 years later, my parents took me to a high school musical. And I remember there was an orchestra pit. And when the lights went down and the live music started, it was the first time I'd really heard live music other than what was at church. And so this was like a full pit orchestra. And I was so captivated again by just this mysterious sound coming from these musicians I couldn't even see. And so I enjoyed the play that night. But as soon as it was over, I didn't run on stage to find my classmates who were the extras in Oliver, the orphans. I ran to peek over and see who was making that music. I had to see. And then when I saw it was high school kids, I had pictured these just sophisticated adults sitting down there. And then I'm watching, these are teenagers doing this. It rocked my world. And that was the moment I think I realized I'm supposed to be in this.
So you studied French horn at Jacksonville State University. Why that instrument? What did it teach you?
Well, by university, you're already pretty much set on your instrument. And that choice came in 5th grade. And it's really kind of funny because I went into that horn meeting, I was going to be a saxophonist. And we had been given the Selmer listening survey. You're probably familiar with that. I don't think they use it much anymore, but it's just a simple test. It has about 120 samples on it where you just have to recognize high, low stuff, pitch discernment. And I'd aced the test. And so Mickey Fisher, bless his heart, he handed me a saxophone, but I could tell, he was not at all interested in that. And so after I blew around on that for a minute, he and Don Everett from the music room said, Dave, you got a really good ear. And we need some people like you doing this thing called the French horn. And I'm like, what the heck's a French horn? I had no idea. And I was easily persuaded. They talked me into it, and I sat last chair, fifth grade, 9 horns. I was ninth. I was last chair, sixth grade, seventh grade as well. And then after seventh grade, Mickey pulled me aside and said, you could benefit from some private lessons. Why don't we do some lessons this summer? And I said, okay, once again, agreeable. And he turned me into a player in 3 months. And I came back and jumped from ninth to third, and then went to high school. And by 10th grade was first chair the rest of the way. And so by college, that was all set. But I ended up loving the fact that I had the horn suggested to me because it's such a colorful instrument. Nothing really grabs the timbre the same way that the French horn does. It's so heroic in the orchestra. And so it's easy to identify with.
So were you always thinking, I want to teach, or did that kind of sneak up on you?
A little of both. All I knew at first was I wanted to understand how music works. I have a very analytical personality. I was born with it. I was the kid that would find something mechanical in the garage and take it apart, see how it works, and might not be able to get it back together at first, but just curious. And so it was sort of the same thing, being curious.
Well, you taught instrumental music for 34 years. That's a long time to hear band kids attempt to tune. What kept you going year after year?
Well, I'm sure, I don't know if you're aware, I did take about a 7-year halftime break in between that career. So I had to take some years off after Stockbridge because it is so intense. And the amount of work is, especially during marching season. There are some weeks that are 70, 80 hours long for those of us that are teaching school in the day and then running band after school and on the weekends. But the fact that I loved the work, it just never really became a chore. It did wear me down. I did start experiencing, some issues from stress. So I took some time off, and that allowed me to explore engineering and some personal endeavors. But I couldn't stay away long. I reached a point where I felt called again, and I had a strange career when it came to music education. I only had 4 jobs, and the last 3 of them were all the result of somebody calling me and saying, hey, we need you for this job. So I never really, other than that first year out of college, which I spent not working because I couldn't find a job, I never really had to go looking after that. And so I felt just incredibly blessed. And, I looked at other people and what they're having to do to make a living. And I thought, I'm getting to teach kids music. Stress be damned. This is noble work. I'm going to stick with it. And I realized too, it was helping me to continue to develop my own artistry, to constantly being coaching artistry with others. And so once I discovered that, I realized I was in the right place.
Well, let's be real. What changed the most in music education from your early years to 2019, besides the budget, which I assume was always tragic? I mean, music education is always the bottom of the totem pole, it seems, when education budgets are being formed. What changed the most that you saw from your early years to the end when you retired?
What changed the most? I think, despite the fact that the funding is still kind of lagging, it's still one of those areas that gets targeted. I think if you set that aside for a minute, in terms of the community at large, I think there's a far greater understanding about what marching band is and what band class is than there was, say, when I graduated in 1978 from high school. We were sort of seen as niche, people, and it was just sort of this extracurricular thing. And I think now, even there's just so many good bands because what's happened is people like me who were brought up in a good program with college, became a director, and now we're out developing programs. There are kids that were in my bands that are now out teaching other bands and the Blue Devils and these top flight drum corps groups. And so I think the biggest thing, my takeaway, is just seeing how much quality music education has spread. It was not, the assumption for me in 1980, if you picked a school at random, was they probably don't have a great band. That's not really the case anymore because I judged a lot of competitions over the last few years before moving, and it just gets amazing to me how many quality programs there are now. And so I think eventually the funding will fall in line. I think people are responding to music education the way it needs to be responded to. There's just always a lag in getting our leaders and the bean counters on board, and hopefully that'll take care of itself. And there's been times where that's been successful too. In particular, there was a time at Stockbridge where we battled for several years, and then eventually got some budget and helped pave the way for the next generation. And the same thing happened at Dalton. I had no equipment; it was all worn out. Our uniforms were worn out when I took that job. Took me 2 years to convince them, but then the board came through and provided a huge budget for us for the next 4 or 5 years just to get the band back up and running. So that's the biggest thing is there's good music education everywhere now, and that just wasn't the case. One thing that was exciting about coming to Stockbridge, you went to school in the hotbed for symphonic band education in the 70s and 80s, and that's District 6. Clayton County was the premier symphonic band district in the state. And so that wasn't lost on me when I got that job offer.
Well, people, I think they think you just wave a stick and magic happens, and they don't realize that you're a therapist, a logistics coordinator, a fundraiser, and occasionally a hostage negotiator when the percussion section gets weird. So,
Yeah.
what's a moment that still sticks with you? Breakthrough, performance, or just a random Tuesday from those years of teaching band and making a difference in kids' lives?
Oh, wow. Gosh. Well, in a weird way, us talking today, the work I'm doing with Mark, I really cherish this opportunity because, as a band director, the band director band student relationship is kind of one way. And that's what creates the challenge. You're trying to create an environment where you have a family atmosphere, but when you really break it down, the director's the one making all the demands and the kids don't get to make any demands at all. And so you have to kind of tiptoe through that very carefully. I guess it's just giving back. Like I said, you guys helped me help you, and now I get the chance to help you help me. And it's just an incredible circle if you stop and think about it.
Yeah, and that's what teaching is all about, right? And building those relationships. I know for me, you were my band director from 1987 to 90, and that band room was my safe place during a turbulent season as a teenager. You didn't just teach music, you gave steadiness, you saw us, and that mattered. And I'm grateful for you. You inspired me to be the musician and the teacher I am today. So those ripples you threw, that rock you threw into my pond,
You're
is
right.
now rippling out to my
Yes.
students. So thank you so much for everything that you did for us. You
Oh,
said something. Go ahead, Dave. I'm
I was
sorry.
just going to say, my pleasure. Like I said, I felt blessed, and I have received just as much benefit having taught you guys, you and Mark and Will and the rest of the Stockbridge folks. It made me a better musician and made me a better artist. So I'm equally grateful.
You said something in your bio that really stuck with me, that your artistry has always depended on your willingness to teach. When you tried to abandon teaching and focus only on your own art, you hit obstacles. But when you balanced both, things flowed. I get that. Tell us about that.
Well, I wasn't really called to teach. That I didn't feel a calling at first. It was suggested to me that I consider music education as a more stable route than the rock star degree, which I had my eyes focused on. And it made a lot of sense. And so I started out my career thinking I'm going to be both. I'm going to be a music educator. I'm going to be a rock star. And while doing both progress. But there were times when I got a little burned out on teaching. There was a time where I dropped out of teaching for a few years to pursue some individual goals. And some of those came to be, but after a while, it became clear that I was running into obstacles and the universe was not feeling very aligned with me at those particular moments. And so it was really kind of trial and error. I started to see this pattern develop over a couple of decades that getting back into helping people removed whatever roadblocks I was dealing with. And so it became clear my purpose is to help people with music as much as it is to create music of my own. And I'm now creating music that I could have only dreamed of 30 years ago. And it's a direct result, I think, of understanding that my purpose on the planet was servitude, that I'm here in service to spread the joys of music and how it can impact lives in a positive way. And you're a shining example of it.
Oh, thank you. Well, let's talk Drum Corps International. For people who've never experienced DCI, it's like if a marching band and the Olympics had a baby, and that baby was super intense.
Yeah, that's a great
You
analogy.
worked in design, coordination, and instructional roles. What does that world demand from people, and what does it build and instill in them?
Well, it's really like you mentioned, it's very, very similar to the atmosphere in the marching band world. It's not affiliated with a single school or institution. So it's different in that regard. It's more of a community effort. People come from all over the US to various places to join these groups. And so it's basically the same thing, a family that's got a common goal that these people are like-minded in terms of pursuing excellence in performance. And it's just like, for my friends, when they ask what's DCI, I just tell them, imagine professional marching band, right? Imagine, look at a high school football team and then watch the NFL. Well, that's what you're going to find when you first discover DCI. These performers are incredible, especially now the demands that they have to do with movement and playing and all the simultaneously responsibilities that are loaded on the performers. It's a stunning thing, and if if your listeners have never checked it out and they have an interest in the marching arts, they would certainly love it. It's all over YouTube. Go check it out.
Oh, I love watching those videos. It just takes me back.
Yeah.
How did the Corps influence the way you taught in the band room?
That's a great question because I pursued instructional positions early in my teaching career in DCI for the purpose of reinforcing and benefiting and upgrading what was going on in the band room. So in many cases, I'm bringing in things I'm learning on the DCI tour that other band directors may not be including in their programs because they don't have that same access. And the wonderful thing about DCI, particularly at the time, was we didn't just get judges' tapes. We had critique each night after the show. We got about 15 or 20 minutes to meet with the panel and separate with the captions. And it gave us a chance to listen to their comments and then get to go ask about what they've commented on. And so I was a 21-year-old kid picking the brains of these people that had been doing this for 30 years, the experts in the industry. And I thought, man, I'm getting a huge jump start on what's going to go on in my band room. I started teaching corps before I started teaching band. I couldn't get a band job my first year out of college, but there was a drum corps internship available. So that's what I did. I worked on my design, worked on, making that course successful. And then, as you implied, I just brought a lot of that into the band room. As a matter of fact, some of the arrangements we played were purchased from the arrangers that wrote for some of the DCI course. Were you in the band when we did City of Angels, or was that right after you left? City.
No, that must have been
City of
after I
Angels was
left.
when I saw the Madison Scouts perform that. I called Scott Borma, the arranger, a friend of mine, and said, dude, I got to have it. We're playing that next year at Stockbridge High School. He said, great. He had it in the mail. And so that's just a great example of how we tapped into the professionality of the DCI network to try to inspire excellence in the high school band.
That's awesome. It's like you had a secret playbook to level up these
Yeah,
kids, and it just showed you how if you just believe in kids that they can do more, they will do more.
that's right.
And that not don't just say because they're kids they can't do it. And I spoke on that on the last episode that I did, is that you got to give people the benefit of the doubt, and
Yeah,
help them believe that they can do it. It's just simply believing in that student.
that's right. And to a point, I try to see the child as they can be, not as they are. And sometimes it's a challenge because the as they are is not great. And you have to stick with them to get to that next level. It doesn't always work, but most of the time, if you give a kid a chance, and that's where the family atmosphere is so important. Kids are willing to try. Kids are willing to try hard for their family. They're not willing to try hard for some tyrant that's waving the stick and yelling at them through a megaphone about being out of step all the time. And so you have to. That's the challenge, and you don't really get any classwork on that in the education degree. You get a little bit in the psychology classes, but in terms of just step by step, how do you go about creating a family atmosphere from a bunch of strangers that all love music? It's not as easy as it may sound, and that was the challenge. And I felt like it depends on the quality of the kid too. And one of the things that made me so interested in coming to Stockbridge was, our fabulous middle school director, Ross Iddings, had already been there for a year working with Mr. Coleman. And I knew what he was capable of and was already starting to produce numbers and results. And so it was just a matter of time, before that would lead to the kind of atmosphere and the kind of kid we needed at the high school to create this family atmosphere because he was doing it too, right? The middle school band room was just as important as the high school band room. And
Oh yeah, that was the feeder for what you were doing for sure.
that's right. And because Ross and I were friends, we were classmates, we had the same marching experiences, we had the same DCI experience. It was really easy to coordinate. And at that time, you couldn't always expect feeder programs and high school directors to always get along and work together because they each kind of had their own agendas. And sometimes that happened and sometimes it didn't, but it was automatic with me and Ross and Mike. We had all already known each other and in some cases had worked together. And so then you stir in the final component, which is a bunch of awesome, talented students that just need some direction. And we knew we were sitting on a gold mine. We knew it was going to blow up, and it took a couple years longer than we thought. But by the time it was over, we were going head to head with Lassiter and beating them in GE in 1994 at the Sprayberry competition. We were second place. Lassiter still won, but we beat Walton, Grissom, Irmo, South Carolina, a bunch of BOA bands that were really, really good. And of course, Lassiter was twice our size and still managed to knock them off in GE, almost beat them in music. And then in marching, they took that caption. But those were good times.
They were good times. I'll make sure that I share this podcast with the Lassiter band director when we get done too, so
Yes,
that he'll
you please
remember.
do. He's retired. Alfred's retired now, but you know what? He was on the field. The quirky thing about that contest, the directors went out and stood with the officers at the awards presentation, which we never really saw that at Old South or any of these other contests. And when we went out there to wait for the awards, we were one block over from Lasker. Well, Alfred came over before they even called out and said, "Hey, my band parents think you guys won this thing." And that has always stuck with me because he said it with a smile on his face. And it just showed me what kind of character he really had deep down, is he was kind of rooting for us, even though that might mean explaining to his kids why they were second. And I thought, that's admirable. And it just made me feel, I think 94 was the first time I felt like I was in the club. I was in the the good band director club, right? I just felt like having the Lassiter director come over and say, "Man, you guys were awesome. My parents were afraid y'all won."
Just pure class. Just
Yeah,
pure
and then
class
when
for
they
sure.
won, and then the way they announced the trophies, they mixed in the captions, and when they called out GE and we actually won that, I looked over and he looked at me like, "Yeah, see, I told you."
Speaking of people from our past, I want to bring in Mark Ware, your songwriting partner. Mark is a Georgia country singer songwriter and also one of my awesome classmates and high school bandmates and dear friends. So, this is officially a full circle, small world episode with a soundtrack. Let's get Mark on the line. Hi, Mark.
Hey guys, how are y'all? Good to see you, David Heather.
Hey, dude.
Thanks for calling in. Welcome to the show.
You're welcome.
Well, quick context, Mark, we want to have you on for a full episode as well. But today I wanted listeners to hear a little bit about what you and Dave are building together. How did you start writing together with one in Georgia and one in Ecuador?
So, I don't know, I guess it was about 2 years ago now, Dave. I just saw on the internet where he was going to make a trip over to the States, and I invited him and the twins to a show, and we got to catch up. And then just from talking back and forth on the internet and staying connected, I started bouncing a few things off of Dave just to get his opinion. And that turned into, hey, why don't we try to write a couple? So I think we've released a couple now, and we got another one on the way, but doing very well. But it just staying in touch, and just an idea popped up. I always like to run stuff by Dave. I consider him the expert in my life. So I always like to bounce stuff off of him. He's been so much more than a teacher. He's so much more than a teacher, and even now, I still look at him as my band teacher, but just an awesome friend as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, we've been reminiscing a little bit, and it's been great. So, what does David bring that makes the songs better for you, Mark?
His magical ears, that he has, and the suggestions that he comes back with just reminds me of what all I have yet to learn in this business. He is definitely one of the best when it comes to production, and we got to spend a little bit of time with him at our other buddy Will's studio, and I brought him in to just to put another set of ears on a tune I was cutting it real. And I've known this for a very long time, and I'm just honored that Dave Henry's in my life right now, and I can still bounce stuff off of him back and forth. But he's just a musical genius. I'm glad to have him on my team.
So, Dave, walk me through the workflow. How do you guys actually collaborate long distance?
Well, it works a lot like you'd imagine. Mark is the star here. These are his songs, so he comes up with some ideas that are concepts and some lyrics. And then we'll get on the phone, talk about it a little bit. And the main thing I try to do is hammer out, what's the emotional angle? What are we trying to say here? And so I take what he sends me and I do a little craft on it, move some things around, fill in some gaps. I send it back to him. I do a little music demo, and he makes changes to make it more personal and to fit exactly the way he wants to deliver it on stage. And we just keep going until we get it the way we want it.
So, guys, when people hear the music, what do you hope that they feel? What do you hope that they get out of your music together?
Dave, you want to start?
Sure. What I'm doing when I'm crafting is I'm thinking emotion. And what do I want? Do I want you to cry? Do I want you to laugh? Do I want you to smile? And so when I'm reading Mark's words, I can tell where he's headed with that. And I just try to craft the words to emphasize the emotional thing. And I also, in some cases, bring in literary devices that he may not have thought of. So, for example, in one of the songs, I believe it was, I Already Love You. And he approached me with the concept of, I've got a grandbaby due, and we don't know yet if it's a boy or girl, but it doesn't matter. And that was the basis, for the song. And so that's really easy to take stuff like that and pick an emotional channel and let that be the guide for the words and the literary devices. So in this particular case, I suggested that we have the angels whisper in Mark's ear about this upcoming baby, right? And I brought the angels as a character into the story. And that's how I view my craft, is finding the literary devices that, an artist might miss and use that to support what it is they're trying to say with the song. And so far we've had great success, and I'm loving all this working with Mark. It's just amazing.
And Heather, as for me, when I made a decision to once I retired from my day job and made a decision to chase this music thing full time, my top priority was, and it still is today, is that when I'm long gone, I just want to tell my story while I'm here. So anyone that can pull up a Mark Ware catalog would know exactly who Mark Ware was, and more importantly, my grandkids, my children, my family, they can go back and reminisce at any time. Anytime they wanted to feel Papa, see Papa, smell Papa, know who Papa was, who Daddy was, then they can just click my song. And so, just the little things like Dave was just talking about, of bringing the angels into it, because I'm real heavy in my faith, and a lot of my songs have a faith message in there. Those are the kind of things that you can't buy. So when you collaborate with somebody that's on Dave's level, it's just amazing to me how the project turns out. And then when I can look back at the end and say, that's exactly what I was trying to say. That's exactly what I was trying to get it to sound like. But I'm like Dave, I couldn't be more happy, and I can't wait to, I wish I could fly to Ecuador tomorrow and spend about 10 days. We've often planned it, and let's just fly over there with just one set of clothes and a notebook, and just do nothing but write songs all week. But
I want y'all to know now, I'm making friends with the studio owner. There's a recording studio in Montañita, which is about an hour from here. So just keep that in the back of your head.
All right, Mark, let's go on a writing.
I'm ready.
That's good, man. You guys, you do it. Get about 2 or 3 of you. We'll just have a little workshop out here in the cabana.
Just come on down.
John, get them all.
Well, guys, I'm so grateful to have you both on. And again, Mark, we're going to have you on for your own episode soon, because I can't wait to talk about your career and your calling. You have just done amazing things. I love being able to be a part of your circle and see all these amazing things that, we didn't even dream of when we were in high school. And now look at what has come, and it's just been amazing. So before I let you go, Mark, where can people find the music that you and Dave are doing, and what's coming next?
So you can find us on anywhere that you download your music today: Apple Music, iTunes, Spotify, Pandora, any of the platforms you can find us on just by searching Mark Ware. You can also find all the links at officialmarkware.com, and also on Mark Ware Music on YouTube. You can find it anywhere you download your music. So what's next is I'm planning on headed back to Nashville on Sunday. I've got a couple of songs in the hopper. One's just another song just about me, and the next song is from another collaborator that I'm working with through the International Singer-Songwriters Association, and it's going to be a good one. I don't even want to give out the name of that one yet, but it's going to be an absolute smash of a hit, I do believe. But I'm headed up to Nashville Sunday, a day early, because I want to support some of my friends who's doing some singer-songwriter stuff up there. I'll go ahead and shout out his name. I'm really proud of him. He's one of my proteges. But John McDuffie, I think you're working with him too.
Yes, he's one of my students.
He's got him a showcase in Nashville. So Kim and I is going to go up a day before and surprise him with a visit, and just go listen to his stories and his playing and stuff. So just staying really, really busy. Our tour starts back about the second week of March. I think we start in Florida and then hit to Kentucky and then come back down on the Southeast. So I hope to finish with about 40 to 50 shows again this year. We did 51 shows in 52 weeks last year from Seattle to Florida. So don't think I'm going back out on the West Coast yet. My choice, just till I can just focus on building the Southeast region. And so we're really focusing hard on the Southeast. So if you're anywhere in the Southeast and want to see us this year, just go to officialmarkware.com and request a date, and I'll stick management on them, and we'll bring some music to your town.
That's awesome, Mark. I love hearing about the collaborations that actually work, and this has just been amazing. Thanks for joining us today, and I'll be in contact about us doing an interview soon, okay?
Awesome. Love you guys. See you, Dave.
Love you.
Okay, bro.
All right. Bye.
So, alongside teaching, you stayed active in the industry: audio engineering, live sound, custom PA design, and installs. And you also worked as a studio musician at a local studio here in Atlanta called Reel to Reel. And I have to tell you, I have my own reel to reel story. It's very personal for me, too. I dated a recording engineer there for several years, and my band also recorded there, and I spent an irresponsible amount of time in that building. And when I say irresponsible, I mean I slept on the studio floor more than once. We'd show up when it was light outside, record all day, record all night, and leave when it was light again. And that's how you think it's glamorous, like we're artists, we're creating, and then you realized you used a hoodie as a pillow next to a patch cable and you haven't showered in 2 days. Very rock and roll, right?
Oh,
Very hygiene adjacent.
Love it, love it.
So tell me about your reel-to-reel lane. What kind of sessions were you doing? What was your role?
Well, before we even get to that, the whole way that worked out is just another example of how something I call path crossing, how we meet people and then things change. And about the time I was offered the job to come teach the band at Stockbridge, Bill Turpin was cruising the music business campus. He was looking for a studio manager for Reel to Reel, and he hired a guy named Joe Randolph. Well, who's Joe Randolph? My high school buddy, my college roommate, professional engineer, played with Ed in marching two-step together, all three of us. And so I'm moving to town, and not only am I starting this Stockbridge band program, but now my best bud is working at Reel to Reel. And so combined with the fact that Bill had kids in the band, Bill Turpin and I were just instantly best friends. And that led to all of this. And of course, working with Joe. And the biggest thing I was doing, to get back to your question, Joe and I managed a program that was called the Songwriter Demo Program. And it was for people that couldn't afford time and union musicians and the cost associated with producing a quality demo. And so basically, Joe and I were like a two-man squad that used the new high-tech MIDI technology to build these demos, all the instruments, even though it was just us. And there would be some playing, there would be some programming, but what these folks would do is they'd send in a cassette of them strumming their out of tune guitar and singing along, and Joe would take that and create an arrangement. We'd set about scoring it. And so for really, I think it was like $60-$80, something like that, they could get a full produced demo. It just had some of the MIDI programming in there instead of live musicians. And this thing was really successful. We had quite a few clients, and it kept me hopping for about 3 years, playing piano, singing, playing bass. Joe would cover the guitars. It came to keyboards, synths. I'd handled stuff like that. And it came at a time when Bill was expanding the studio. He was having to do some construction upstairs, the road, remember the highway and what a disaster that was. And so this little project kind of helped the studio keep some revenue going while they were temporarily dealing with all that. And it was a great service. Joe did a great job with it. And it's just interesting how that all came together. I showed up to teach, and here's my best bud running the studio. How does that work?
And of course, Reel to Reel is a very iconic studio here in the Atlanta area that has recorded many great artists and just a lot of great music that has come out of Reel to Reel. And so I was very honored to be a part of some of the music that came out of that amazing studio.
Well, the other great benefit that came out of that for us was, as a result of what we were doing, Bill was very amiable about if there was time, if the studio was empty, he let Joe and I just bring in whoever. And so there were several of the bands we were playing with that needed budget demos and other projects. And so we did a ton of after hours projects at no charge from the studio, which was a huge, and Bill didn't have to do that, right? He was an awesome person. I know you know how
Oh,
cool
yeah.
Bill Turpin was.
Yes.
And he loved everybody he met, and he had no problem just letting us do that. And some of these people might have ended up being paying customers if he'd have stood his ground. But, it wasn't about money for Bill.
Mm-mm.
It was about, like you're talking, he had a talent and he wanted to share it, and he wanted to help other people find their place in the music world. And he's sadly, we miss him now. He passed away, I think, a couple of years ago.
Yeah. He was one of the first ones. I remember I was 13 years old and I got my first paid job in the big Methodist church there in Stockbridge. And
Yeah.
of course, I think I was making $50 a week or something. And my parents were having to actually drop me off because they went to the Baptist church. And they said, you can go and help the Methodist, but on Sunday night and Wednesday night, you're back here in the youth group. But Bill was one of the first ones that he went to that church, the Methodist church. And I remember the first Sunday he came up to me and he said, I just want to tell you, I think you are very talented, and I hope you will believe in yourself. And he said, if you ever want to come and record, you let me know, and I own the studio next door. And I'll never forget that.
Yeah.
Those
that
people in
sounds
my
just-
life, who really encouraged me in those very impressionable years. So I also want to touch on some of your performance credits because this list is wild. I'm going to name a few and you pick one of your favorites and tell us about that, okay? So let me just let me do the list. Let me do the rundown first. So here's
Sure.
Travis Tritt, who's one I actually got to play with his band. I worked
Excellent.
in my 20s. I worked at a steel company before I got into radio. And there was this big tour bus. I saw it. And after I got off work, I walked over there to see who it was. And it was Travis Tritt's band. And their bus had broken down. And I happened to have a battery operated keyboard in my trunk. And I sat there on the curb while they were waiting. And we all just jammed and sang. It was pretty cool.
Get out.
So it was pretty funny. So Travis Tritt, you did the Super Bowl pregame show in 2000. Of course, Ed Roland, March and Two-Step era. This was pre-Collective Soul era. You shared bills with Motown era legends Sam Moore, Wilson Pickett, The Temptations, Percy Sledge, Benny E. King, Mary Wilson, Otis Redding. You also did the 1991 Cherry Blossom Festival in Macon, and I mean, so many others, Dave. Which one is your favorite?
Well, a lot of them. I don't tend to have favorites, right? I know a lot of people have a favorite color and a favorite food and all of that. And people ask me what's my favorite color, all of them, right? I like color. So I love them all, but some of them do stand out. I think what strikes me the most out of those, Travis, Percy Sledge, and a couple of others, Archie Bell. Those 3 or 4 people they were just so easy to work with that it felt like it was just one of our unfamous colleagues in rehearsal and on stage together. And not all of the stars that we performed with were like that. Some of them were a little bit snooty. And but these guys were not. And Travis, it was just amazing that the way that came about was, those guys that do Super Bowl and stuff like that, unless it's changed, they don't get paid for that. The value to them is the gig, the exposure. But apparently Travis's band had other stuff going on that paid more than exposure. And so Travis had to contact the organizers and say, look, I'm going to be needing a pickup band, so let's get people in Atlanta. And he made it very clear. He said, because the instruments were pre-recorded for that performance, but the vocals were live. And because of that, he made it very clear. I want the actors, if the camera cuts in and it's a G chord we're hearing, then the guitar player better be on a G chord, right? He said, I don't want this stupid acting that was starting to take over the industry, if you remember. People didn't even play instruments in some cases. And so we rehearsed it up. And the way I got backed into that was Chris Moore, my good friend, who's the band director at Georgia Tech, has a side gig that he manages all the acts at the Braves Stadium and for a lot of the civic activities in town. So when the organizers fielded this request from Travis, they turned to Chris and said, hey, we need some musicians to back Travis up at Super Bowl. So he hired his top Braves band, which he's a member of. He's the drummer and he has a full band, but the bass player had already accepted a gig. So he needed a substitute bass player. So just imagine one day the phone ringing. I pick up the phone. Hey, what's up? It's Chris. What's going on? I don't know, man. I got a gig for you if you want it. Well, what is it? Well, it doesn't pay very much, but it's pretty high profile. This is Chris being all low key. And he said, it's Travis Tritt, pregame Super Bowl halftime or pregame at the Super Bowl, in 2 months. I was like, what? And he goes, yeah, my bass player can't make it. I hired my band, but he already had a gig. So I'm looking for a bass player. And if you want it, you got it. And I'm like, dude, who's going to turn this down? And so he sent it was a little medley of 2 tunes. We rehearsed it up and Travis was so easy to work with. We had a dress rehearsal on Friday with him. He had some recommendations on what we should wear. And he was very professional and very, I just was struck by how detail oriented he was. And yet it didn't come across as condescending in any way. You just felt like you were dealing with another musician hanging out at reel to reel. And when the stars do that, it's just so much easier to support them and do what they're doing if they're going to be nice about it. So I'd say Travis. And as far as crowd size, I mean, come on, Super Bowl pregame, that has to be the peak in terms of crowd size. But they were all great. And those Motown artists, the way that came about was a band I was in Valdosta, based in Valdosta, Georgia. And there was a club there. I think it was called the Signature Club. And it was Black family, owned and operated, Black clientele. And they had a house band Tuesday through Friday, but Saturday night they would showcase a Motown artist, this was in the 80s. So it was 20 years before. And so once Sam Moore was the first one who got booked, and it was sort of the situation like the Travis story. He called the club and said, look, I'm not under contract right now. I don't have a band put together, but I want to do this gig. Can you help me find some musicians? And they said, well, you know what? There's a band local here that plays your stuff and stuff like it. And so the next thing you know, he hired us, sent us the horn charts. We rehearsed with him when he recorded it. And he was so blown away that he called his friends on the rest of the docket, and said, hey, leave your band at home, hire these guys, and don't worry, it's going to be great. And so that's basically what happened is we started getting calls from the other people. So we were basically a backup band for all those Motown guys in a Black owned and operated club, probably the only white people in there, and they loved us and we loved them. And it was just a wonderful time.
Well, that's the thing about good music is it's all about heart anyway. And when you have those relationships, that's really what we've talked about this whole entire episode is just the heart and the relationships behind the teaching, behind the music, behind everything that we do. And I love that. I just think it's amazing. All right, let's switch gears a little bit. Ecuador. Oh my goodness. This isn't just we moved. This is we moved countries with kids and built a whole new life. You relocated to Ecuador in 2021. Why did you choose Ecuador and what were you hoping everyday life would look and feel like?
Well, the desire to move came as we started to prepare to retire. And I sat down and my typical nerdy self, I created a post-retirement budget that covered the first 10 years, year by year, of retirement. And just projecting what that was looking like got very concerning. And of course, now you look around and you can see my hunch was right. Things have gotten really expensive in the United States and people are having a hard time affording stuff. And so the primary goal was to find a place to live that would allow us on retirement income to still fund our girls' education if they so choose. If they want to go to college, we'd like to help them out with that. And so the original plan was we started looking at parts of Europe where they have free university. So we were looking at Scandinavia and Germany, places like that. But COVID came, the pandemic disrupted all of that. And so we sort of had a paradigm shift in 2019 and started thinking, well, instead of going where there's free university, how about we go somewhere where we can save enough money to where our kids can go to university anywhere in the world? And so the list changed from Europe to Asia, South America, some other places. Didn't really have any connection with the Asian culture, but with the large Hispanic population in Dalton and having taken Spanish as a student in high school, I just felt a little more connected with this part of the world. And so we put a list together and started whittling them off. The top three ended up being Costa Rica, Ecuador, and Panama. And we ruled out Costa Rica because it's not the deal it used to be. And we ruled out Panama only because Ecuador offered a lot more in terms of what we felt like culture and diversity, the eco-diversity. Ecuador it's a country that's really about the landmass size of the state of Colorado. But in that state of Colorado, imagine having not just the Rockies, but the Amazon and the Pacific Ocean. Because that's basically what we have is we have a coastal region and the mountain region and the Amazon region, and they're all 12 hours by car, and we can cover the whole thing. So the eco-diversity, the beauty, the natural beauty, the chance to live right on the ocean and not have to rob a bank or steal something, because the prices are just so much more affordable. And so it's a little bit, it was a little bit problematic at first, thinking, all we want's the American dream. Why we got to go to Ecuador to find it? But now that we're here, we're like, okay, we're cool with this.
That's
it's
awesome.
working.
So Spanish check. Are you fluent? Are you still in the smiling and nodding era?
Well, not fluent, not smiling and nodding. I've learned what immersion really means, and what that actually, I would describe it more as vignette learning. So, for example, on the day I have to take my car to get it serviced, I'll take out my translator and just practice having a little conversation with myself about what needs to be done. And that introduces whatever jargon is specific to the thing. And I just learn what I need to get through that conversation. And after 5 years of that, there's a lot of conversations I can have now.
That's awesome. Well, most people say they want to slow down and then they don't, but you actually did it. So what was the biggest logistical nightmare of moving to another country?
The biggest logistical nightmare would be deciding if you're going to take stuff. What we did was made a conscious decision, like many others, to kind of go minimalist at the same time we were moving. So we didn't get a big shipping cart and pack all our furniture or anything like that. We got a very small shipping crate that housed our sleep number bed and our musical gear, and that was about it. And it's a little expensive to ship something overseas, so that's a little bit of a problem. For people that are considering this, all of those problems are minor compared to the psychological problem of just dealing with the question to begin with, because it's so different from every other decision that you've ever made in your life. And so this is what we struggled with, was we spent 3 months going, can we leave the country? Is this doable? Because it just seemed impossible. And it just seemed such a foreign notion, pardon the pun, that we just couldn't really wrap our head around it. And then I started thinking after about 3 or 4 weeks, we've had difficult decisions to make before. home ownership is a difficult thing to navigate. And there's lots of things in life, in adult life, that are difficult. So it turned out that really the secret was living with that notion long enough that it just turned into another decision. It just turned into another situation where we're going to list the pros and the cons and then just make a decision based on our research. And once it got to that point, psychologically, it was pretty easy, because at that point, it just turned into simply the question of how willing are you to make changes to be happy? And that's one thing Jessica and I have always kind of locked in on with us individually and our family is we choose to identify as happy people more than anything else, more than sports fans or even music fans or whatever. We identify as happy people, and we were struggling a little bit to stay happy while we were in Dalton, because things were getting hard to afford and there was challenges with the kids, and it's just all worked out really well. But for anybody hearing this that thinks, oh, I could never do that, I thought that too. And then I spent a few months thinking about it. And once it turned into, well, what about your happiness? Then it was a different issue, and it's manageable at that point.
So I have to know, do your kids speak better Spanish than you do yet?
No. No, mi niñas no practicar. My kids don't like to practice Spanish, and they're coming along. They realize now, they're 13 now, and they realize now they want to socialize a little bit, and they're changing their ways. But when we got here, they were 7. And so the thought of learning a whole new language for them was like, I haven't even finished learning English yet. I got to learn Spanish. and then I think we had a year or two where we put them at first. When we first got here, we homeschooled them because we thought, okay, they don't have any Spanish, and the schools here are Spanish only for the most part. And but then we decided, it's time for them to learn. So we're going to put them we found a little private school down here, and they spent a year doing that. But that was a really good experience overall, but it was so much work for them because they couldn't do the work in Spanish. So it basically meant translating every assignment into English, completing the assignment, and then translating all that back into Spanish. It just like doubled the work. It just like doubled the work on every project. And so after a year of that, they were like, okay, we promise to keep studying Spanish if you'll let us go back to online school. And so that's what we've done. They have a Spanish class, and they are getting it. And Jessica and I are starting to speak it more and more to each other in the house. So I think that's going to help moving forward. But, they're coming around to it.
That's awesome. Well, most people retire and buy a recliner. You moved to South America and kept creating. That's a whole different retirement plan. So let's talk about some virtual instrumentation and some AI instruments that you're using.
Okay.
And let's shift gears because, you moved and then you brought your musical instruments with you, it sounds like, but then you have this new technology and you're doing all these collaborations. Talk to us about that.
Well, and what's great about this angle is it goes back to the relationship angle we've already been talking about, because I brought all that stuff and the plan was to get set up pretty quickly. But a year later, I had not really set the gear up, and I needed a new DAW. I needed a better laptop, and I had not really started because we'd spent a year just adjusting. And, there's a lot of transition even after you're moved in that you got to deal with. But like I said, relevant to what we're talking about earlier, one day I just happened into the Cabana restaurant that my friend Anna owns, and she said, I need to introduce you to my new cook. And I said, okay, great. And he came out, and this young man's name was Felipe Gonzalez, and he's a rapper in Colombia. And long story short, through communicating with him, I decided it's time to get the studio running because I want to record a track with this guy. And So that spurred me and motivated to get my studio up and running. We did a track together. He made a video, and that got the ball rolling. And again, it took me helping Pipe get his track to get my studio up and running that's now producing my work. So once again, reaching out and helping this guy. And he and I still chat. He's back in Bogota now, and we've talked about working on some other projects. And it was a big help to him. He was kind of on a little soul searching trip. He was just kind of traveling around South America because he had trained in college to be a sociology professor and had a job teaching sociology in his mid-20s at a university in Bogota. But then when downsizing came during the pandemic, he got laid off and had not been able to find another job. And so he was basically hanging out here at the beach in Machalia, working to keep enough money, in his pocket, and wondering where his life was headed. And then he and I met and started talking music production. And he said, let's record this rap song. I'm like, okay, cool. And now he's back in Bogota, has a firm direction on his career. It helped jumpstart my post-retirement studio production situation. So once again, the collaborativeness of it is the energy that drove getting all this started for me down here. And had it not been for Pipe, who knows? I might still be sitting here going, I guess I ought to get that stuff out.
So lightning round, first thing that comes to mind. Okay, ready?
Oh, I'm scared.
One instrument you wished you could play.
That I can't play now?
That you can't play now, but one that you wish you could play.
The harpeggi.
Oh,
Are you familiar?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll see that. I'm just captivated by that. I've never had a chance to pick one up, but I'm dying to get one of those. I'm also dying to have a theremin.
Yeah, the harpeggi thing. I've seen Jacob Collier playing one of those on a video. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
So
it has such a cool sound, but it's a completely different layout. So I don't know if I can do it. I guess I'd have to spend some time figuring it out.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think you got plenty of time, right?
Nothing but.
So a song you wish you had written.
Oh, anything by Genesis. Remember Genesis?
Yeah.
I was a big prog rocker. I was a big art rocker, and Phil Collins, Pete Gabriel, Tony Banks, Mike Rufford, those guys, just the music they created captivated me. And I guess if I had to single one out, it would be I guess the title's going to escape me for a minute, but it's this beautiful work that is through composed. Now think about that. A rock band in the 70s producing a track that's 6 minutes long that's through composed. There's not a repeat in it. And I was just so captivated by that because it seemed to sort of bridge my classical training with my love for, art rock and commercial music.
Favorite Blues Brothers song?
Well, all of them, but I guess if I have to pick, You Better Think, Aretha.
All right.
That thing, I see. There's a rule in our house. It doesn't apply as much here, but in Dalton there was a rule in the house. We didn't have many house rules, but one was if you're surfing the TV and you're changing channels and the Blues Brothers are on, regardless of who you are and whether you're family, the remote goes on the coffee table and cannot be touched until the movie's over.
Oh, that's awesome. So what still excites you about music after all these years?
Well, other than the way it connects people, which is what we've kind of focused on today, I go back to that story I gave you about being a child. There's always been something mystical to me about sound. Even the physical properties, the science behind, sound waves and how they work. And the fact that, we have turned our audible sense into a way to appreciate an art form. It's just kind of mind blowing when you think about it. And so I always whenever I'm not feeling completely synced with my artistic self, I always kind of just come back to sonic pleasure, is what I call it. Things that ear candy, right? Ear candy. I can listen if I've got a good sound system and I get to pick what I'm listening to. I can go for hours. And it's just feeding my battery, charging my battery, listening, processing. I have a hard time listening to music passively, which I guess I'm kind of glad that it's that way, because too many of my students, that was the problem, is all they had was passive listening, and I couldn't get them. I had a hard time getting them to explore active listening, right? But it's a blessing and a curse. You hear a new song on the radio, and most people are going, "Oh, that's pretty cool. I like that story." Blah blah blah. And of course, I'm going, "Wow, nice use of the Neapolitan chord there, and the pre-chord."
Such a nerd. So
Yeah,
you
theory
got
nerd 101.
that's right. So last question, you've got a spicy college football take that coaches should only recruit from registered students. No scholarships, no recruiting. All right, explain that.
Okay, well, it sounds weird when we come at it like that, but yeah, it's only half serious, but it's my response to, and this has kind of gotten timely again, but there's been several times over my lifespan where people are, a little upset that college football has gotten a little crazy with the bringing in of the money and the recruiting and the scholarships and all of that. And I'm like, you know what? They're schools. I just used to kind of do a stand-up rant on this for my friends and family, right? They're schools, right? You should just be able to pick some students and go out there and have a team. That's how it started, right? So let's go back to 1890 and have the coach show up in August and pick up the roster and go, all right, you get to pick your team out of these people that have signed up to come to school here. And let's see what happens. Now, it may not make for very pretty football, and it's half in jest, but it's half serious too. I mean, it's kind of gotten crazy.
Sorry, not sorry.
Well, I mean, look at the recent thing with, if I can be specific, the recent ruling with the Ole Miss quarterback, right? They had gone out and basically bought a new quarterback because he wasn't going to be back. And then a judge said, well, yeah, he can come back. So now they got to go back and tell the kid they bought that they don't want him. And I'm like, this is college sports. I mean, come on. So I don't really think my solution is the solution, but I just offer it in a humorous way to point out how far we've come, right? I mean, it used to be that you if you had a school sports team, high school, whatever, you pick the students. High schools aren't allowed to go pay players. You can't go recruit a kid from a neighboring high school. They got rules against all that. And so then you watch what's going on with the NCAA football. And now every team is legally doing what the SMU team did 40 years ago, and they got the death penalty from NCAA. So times have changed. I'm only half joking and half serious about that. But yeah, I kind of would like to see what the football would look like if we just, picked our rosters from the students that have signed up. And it might be some ugly football, but who knows? It might be exciting if everybody's bad.
Oh, goodness. Well, Dave, tell us how we can connect with you on social media and beyond.
Well, I am putting all my music onto the platforms. So if you stream with Spotify, Tidal, whatever, and you want to find some of my music, that'll be coming out on there. I've got 2 singles out under my profile. There's several David Henrys on there, so you might have to look to make sure you get me. The 2 titles that are out are Living in the Light and Just Another Zombie, which is a nice little song about insomnia. And I'll be releasing an album there later this year. So people can find that there. I'll probably have a little YouTube channel. And maybe we could share a link or something. But I do want to add, I'm not really doing a ton of promotion of my own material. As a matter of fact, I joke with my friends because some of my colleagues in the industry who are also old as dirt like I am are like, man, why are you doing this? You're not going to get signed at this age and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I'm building a playlist. As a matter of fact, that's what I'm going to call my album, is playlist. I'm just making a playlist. I'm just taking it to the extreme and crafting all the songs that are going to be in my playlist. rather than using other people's. Yeah.
Well, and I think that should be the joy of making music anyway. It's not to become famous, but to be faithful to the craft and faithful to the
Yeah.
art. And that's what it should be about. So before we close, what are two takeaways that you would like our listeners to know?
Well, I think I think what I'd like to say to that is, while I am a music educator, music education is what we share in common. I obviously promote music literacy, and I'm sure you do too within your studio. I do also simultaneously, though, feel like there's a place in the world for people who want to create music that have never learned an instrument, that have never studied the language of music. And so this is really the beauty of these AI things that are popping up now, is it's opening some doors to people to do this. And so I would encourage people to not let our fellow snobs in the business who say, well, if anybody doesn't read music, you're just playing by ear, that used to have some sort of negative connotation with it. And I do it a lot. I'm a trained musician. I know music theory, but there's times I just sit down and play by ear with something that I'm hearing or in my head or whatever. And so I would just like to validate to people that may see those two things, or may see one as less adequate than the other, that in my world, they're equal, right? And as a matter of fact, I see playing by ear and just that kind of casual interconnection with music as a potential gateway, right? Somebody could get involved with this AI production, and once they hear these songs they can sort of make just by using prompts, it might even prompt them, pardon the pun, to start learning a little bit about music notation and how songwriting works and things of that nature. So I'm a real big ambassador for the fact that I think music should include everybody. And I think sometimes those of us that are trained, we get a little bit snobby about it with some of our friends and neighbors if they don't want to pursue the theory and the notation skills that you have to have if you're going to work in the classical world. You don't have to have that in the pop world. There's, I don't think Phil Collins read it, and he turned out fine, So just explore. There's a certain, I want to see people exploring music regardless of what their background is, because I think that's going to be one of the two big benefits of the AI revolution in music production. Is it's going to open doors to people that couldn't technically manage producing demos. But then it's also going to help people like you and me that can sit down and construct the song without AI help, but can use it as a tool to perhaps enhance what we're doing. So that'd be my message.
That's awesome.
Is if you want to make music, don't let anything stop you. That's the way I've lived my life, is don't let anything stop you from making music, because, people are going to, how people are, they shoot you down sometimes, and who knows what the dynamic is there, but don't listen to people. If you want to make music, make music. If you like listening to music, it might be that you can create music. And the beauty of the AI movement is you don't have to master an instrument to do that. You just have to understand how it all works, develop your prompting skills to get a better product. And I think it's going to revolutionize the way things are done. I think eventually the controversy will settle away, and I'm already using it in an experimental fashion to help with part writing. It's just amazing what it does with part writing. So that would be my message. Explore the music like you're a 3-year-old smacking the kitchen pots and pans with a spatula. Right? That's where it starts.
That's awesome. Yeah, that was a whole master class right there. So David's art and teaching were never separate. They fed each other. And secondly, it's never too late to create something new. You can move, you can reinvent, you can collaborate across borders, you can learn new tools. The work is still there waiting for you to show up. Does that about cover it, Dave?
You know what? That sounds like target acquired.
Well, David, thank you for all those years in the band room that shaped so many of us. And thank you for still making incredible music. And we'll look forward to the new music coming out.
Thank you so much, Heather. It's been a real privilege to be here today. And I'm so proud watching your studio develop and you develop as an artist. It's just so exciting to see you, Mark, Will, all you guys.
Thank you so much.
Y'all are my band family.
We love you.
I love you too, sweetie.
You've been listening to the Heather Patero Show, produced by Heather Patero Studios. Connect with us on Facebook or Instagram, or visit heatherpatero.com. Until next time, stay creative and live on purpose.